Okay, ciao y'all, welcome to Making a Musician. It is me, your host, Helen, and today we are talking about 30 days of sight reading. Now, if you have watched this channel for a bit, you probably are aware that I do like 30-day challenges with different aspects of playing piano. And so the last one I just did was 30 days of scales, and this is 30 days of sight reading. All right, step one, I want to talk about what is sight reading. So if you are not a musician and you are not familiar with sight reading, let me fill you in really quick. Okay, so sight reading is the ability for a musician to look at a piece of music that they're not at all familiar with and just play it or sing it from first sight. It's kind of like reading a book, but it's really, really hard. And one of the reasons that it's really, really hard for me is because none of my mentors really stressed sight reading in any of my musical development. And that's because for me, it's often more important that I have a few really polished pieces rather than a bunch of music that's like kind of like somewhat done. So I actually spend most of my time on a very small amount of music, generally speaking. So that means that sight reading isn't something that I usually spend a lot of time on, but I'm very aware that sight reading and having really good sight reading skills gives me an edge and makes me a lot more competitive in my industry. So I am super, super excited to be focusing on it. So if you saw 30 days of scales, you are probably aware that at a certain point in the challenge, I like went too hard, I burned myself out, and I absolutely hated it. And this challenge I love. It is literally so fun. I'm having the absolute time of my life. So basically what I did was at the beginning of the challenge, I just took all of my music out of my little music library, and I just kind of like pulled out lots of things, like a stack of music that was at like a mid to advanced beginner level or like very early intermediate, and I just put it on a big stack on one of the shelves on my piano. And then every day I just pull out a random book, flip to a random page and read, and I'll just play through stuff. And I'll do that with several books. I'll do that with lots of different types of music, different styles of music, and it's super fun. Okay, so one of the main things that I'm working on in this challenge is reading ahead. So when I'm playing the music, I'm actually looking at the next measure that I'm not playing yet and like analyzing it and figuring out how I'm gonna play it. And that's really crucial in sight reading, and it's actually a really like tricky skill to develop. Another thing that I'm working on in this challenge is I'm sight reading in time and not stopping when I make a mistake. Now, obviously I don't do this in my real repertoire. When I make a mistake, I stop, I work on it, I fix it, and then I go again until I can go without making a mistake, or I can make, you know, a big improvement. But for me, realistically, a lot of what I do at piano is accompanying my students during lessons. And so when I make a mistake, like I can't stop because I'm supporting them as the singer, I'm supporting them as, you know, in whatever they're doing. And so if I make a mistake, I need to just recover and keep going so that I can keep working with them and they can continue on. And also, this is important because in a performance, you don't get to stop. So I think that practicing continuing on and recovering after making a mistake is a really crucial skill. And this has actually been a really cool way to practice that. So something I noticed is that when I make a mistake, I'm finding that I'm getting better at recovering. I'm recovering a lot faster, and I can just like leave it behind me and move on and not think about it anymore. Versus in the past, sometimes making a mistake is like, it can be very jarring, and then I would get really like distracted. It would totally pull me out of what I was doing. I wouldn't be as focused anymore because I'd be like, I can't believe I played that wrong note. I'd be upset. I'd be busy beating myself up, and then I would make more mistakes, and it's like this vicious cycle. And doing this, I'm just like, oh wow, yeah, there is a B flat in F major. You're right. Oh well. And I just like totally move on, and that's been really, really cool. I also noticed that when I make a mistake, so I recover faster, and then if the music repeats later, so if that part that I messed up comes back again, usually on the second time I either play it correctly because I remember and able to like analyze what I did wrong the first time I played it, or I see a really significant improvement, which is so exciting. So the benefits of sight reading and being able to sight read really well are, of course, awesome. Like you have to spend less time practicing, which when I'm doing things like playing music for my students' lessons, like I don't want to have to sit down and practice that music, those accompaniment parts, like 5 hours a week. Like I want to be able to sit down and play through them pretty easily and not like fight for my life. So I think that in the long run, this is gonna save me an insane amount of time and also just like make it faster for me to learn music. Now, my primary instrument is voice, but for me, piano is really important because it helps me be a better musician, but also it's kind of like a fun musical outlet for me, so I don't have that with singing. For me, singing feels like work and piano feels like fun. So I think that in the long run, this is also going to super help me just like have more fun at the keyboard and just like enjoy and just like explore music in a way that's like really dope, and I'm excited about it. So for week 2, I'm gonna keep doing this system. I think it's going really well. Granted, I am gonna be in Mexico, so what I'm thinking I might do is bring maybe one book with me and then go on ISMLP and download a couple of other books and just put them in my virtual library that I'll like sight read from. That seems pretty easy and that seems like a solid choice. And then the other thing I'm gonna do for week 2 is research more sight reading techniques. So things like reading ahead, reading intervals. Something I've gotten really good at during this time that I wasn't necessarily expecting is just kind of being able to like mimic the shape of notes with my hand. So for example, like my hand understands what a sixth feels like, and so I can just look at the music and be like a sixth, and then like maybe like 6 to 8 times out of 10 I'm right. And for something that you're new at, I'd say 60 to 80%, and we're not practicing, that's a good mark. I'm happy with that. So I want to see if I can find more techniques, because I think that in music we act like sight reading is this thing that's like just like God-given, and sometimes you can do it and some people just like can't, and I don't think that's true. I think there's probably a lot of techniques that you can use to make yourself more competitive and really like get better at it, and strategies that you can apply to sight read better. So I'm gonna spend the next week really like researching those, and hopefully in next week's video for 30 days of sight reading I will be able to share that with you, and you can make your sight reading better too, which is super fun. So if you're doing your own 30 days of sight reading challenge, please tell me. I think that would be so fun. So if you're like into it, you're feeling inspired to work on your sight reading, girl, do it with me, and let me know how that's going for you. All right, that's it for me this week. Thank you so much. I cannot wait to tell you next week how this is going, because I am having the absolute time of my life. Okay, that's it for me. Bye!